everyone, and welcome to our Alumni Talks webinar that will give you first-hand information on ESMT Berlin MBA experience. My name is Mila, and I am the moderator of this webinar on behalf of Unimai. Please welcome our panelists, Laurence Wilson, Marketing Manager at ESMT Berlin, and two of their successful current students, Huyen and Aparajith.
Hello.
They will be telling us about the educational journey and how acquiring a degree from ESMT Berlin can enhance your career. You will be able to send your questions throughout the entire webinar by typing them in the chat box, and our panelists will take time to give you an answer during the Q&A session in the second half of this event. Okay, let's check the sound now. Could you please write in the chat box if you can hear me? Great, thank you. All right, everything is set. We can start with the presentation now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mila. So before we move on to our Q&A with Aparajith and Nguyen, I'd just like to give you a little bit of information about ESMT, who we are as a school, and specifically the MBA program, the full-time MBA. So this is the sort of brief contents of what I'll talk you through. So the MBA curriculum, career services, before we move on to the Q&A. So who we are. ESMT Berlin is based, obviously, in Berlin. It's in the name. Which is very much at the heart of Europe, both sort of politically and economically. And it's no accident that we're based in Berlin. The school was founded in 2002 by these 25 multinational companies. And they chose Berlin because it was so central to the European economy, and also because it was such a vibrant and dynamic city that was really going through a lot of change. Now, when the school was founded, we had these three core pillars: leadership, innovation, and analytics, very much at the heart of everything we do. And hopefully, you'll be able to see these kind of through the program as we run through the presentation. This is our school's motto, if you will, our slogan: to develop entrepreneurial leaders who think globally and act responsibly. Now, those three kind of highlights there are, again, something you should be seeing quite a lot as we go through this. Entrepreneurial, global, and responsible. Those are definitely something that, not just for our MBA program, but also for our Masters in Management, our part-time MBA, and our Executive MBA, are really key pillars of the school. Now, we always tell students to not choose their business school based on rankings. So forgive me for putting up this slide. But it is definitely useful for you to get an idea about where the school sits in relation to global competitors. We always say that as long as you're looking in that sort of top bracket of top 10 or top 20, you know that you'll be going to a very decent school. And we're quite proud of the recognition that we've had from some of these external bodies. The big one recently was that the Financial Times has ranked us the #1 school in Germany and the 9th best in Europe. So we're very proud of that. One thing I should mention as well is that the school is accredited by AACSB, AMBER, and EQUIS. Now, these are the three main accreditation bodies. It's that sort of triple crown, if you will, of which we are a member of only 90 schools in the world. And what that means is that when you do graduate and go on to fulfill your careers around the world, it means your degree will be recognized wherever you go. Now, so the full-time MBA. This is, as with many MBAs, it's really for people who are looking to make a change with their life and make a change with their careers. It's for people who have at least 3 years work experience, although the average in class is somewhere around 7 to 10. And it's traditionally for people who are looking to change either their industry, their role, or location. Now, almost all of our graduates will change at least one of those things. The majority will change 2, and some superstars will manage to change all 3. And for a lot of people, it's an opportunity to move to Germany and to sort of live internationally, working with an international cohort, and sort of take advantage of that step into the German economy. The way that the curriculum is structured, so we begin the course every year in January. So Aparajith and Huyen have been with us for a couple of months now. They've been learning about the kind of core business knowledge to bring everybody up to the same level. But soon they will break into their specialization tracks. Now, these are managerial analytics, innovation and entrepreneurship, and strategic leadership. They are, I would say, designed for people who don't necessarily want to become too technical. Just because you're doing the managerial analytics track does not mean that you are going to become an analyst, but you do definitely need to learn to speak the language of analysts so that you can then manage teams of them and be the kind of bridge between a very data heavy part of the business and the rest. And it's the same with entrepreneurship and innovation. We don't necessarily expect that everybody will go on to start their own company after graduation, but it's for those who enjoy working in a slightly more sort of entrepreneurial space. So definitely more flexible, more faster paced, and for those who are interested in learning how to deal with a business that's growing very, very rapidly. The final track is strategic leadership. This is our more traditional MBA track. It's for those who are interested in going to work for established companies, large multinationals, and especially those looking to move into, for example, things like consulting. A few extra things to highlight about the MBA. The most important here is the class profile. Now we accept around 50 students every year. We deliberately keep the class quite small and quite intimate. Some schools go for much larger numbers. You know, you could be one of 2,000 MBAs at INSEAD, or you could be one of 50 with us. We choose to keep it quite small because it really, for us, brings about a very, very intimate learning experience. You will work very, very closely with everybody else in your class, as well as spending a lot of time one-to-one with faculty and staff members such as myself. It's a very close-knit campus. All of the different programs are expected to work together and eat lunch together. So we do try to replicate that in our classrooms as well. Another thing to highlight is the international nature of the cohort. Now, we actively try to recruit students from all around the world. We want people to learn from their sort of classmates almost as much as they learn from the faculty members in terms of how to work with people from different parts of the world. Internationalism is very much the word of the day in business these days, and so hopefully our graduates will emerge out into the world of work in a good place to succeed in a very, very multicultural and diverse environment. Now, that's enough about the curriculum. The big thing, I suppose, the gauche thing to say when taking an MBA, most people are doing this for their careers, and the ultimate aim of this is to ensure that you secure a better job and a better career afterwards. And we do help our students with that through a number of ways. So we have a dedicated careers team for the MBA program, with Sophie and Marcel, who I'm sure you two have been working with recently. And their job is very much to facilitate networking between you and companies and to get you into the best shape for when you do meet those companies. So whether that's bringing companies onto campus through things like careers fairs, or bringing you to companies through things like company visits, their job is very much to secure your next job after graduation and make sure it's the best possible one for you. Alongside that, though, we also employ a number of career coaches. They work with every student almost as much as the careers team, and their job is, it's almost more of a philosophical exercise. Their job is to make sure that you're on the right path, not just for the next 3 years, but also for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. So it's taking a much more sort of longer term look at things. And here we have the last year's career stats for our graduating MBA class. So obviously, don't read too much into this. For example, some industries will pay a lot more than the 83,000 salary here, and some will pay a lot less, but it gives you a rough idea about where our graduates kind of end up. The most important thing to note, I think, on this slide is that 88% of our graduates go on to work in Germany. Now, if you remember how many of our graduates come from outside of Germany, it's a very, very high percentage who choose to stay and take advantage of working in the German economy. The German government are very, very eager to keep hold of students. They're very, very active when it comes to that kind of thing. Every graduating student from our class is given an 18-month visa to stay and work as standard. Every student in Germany gets that. And so most people will choose to take advantage of that. After that 18 months is finished, then it sort of splits into 3 ways. About a third will stay in Germany, a third will move somewhere else in Europe, and a third will go somewhere else in the world. I should say as well, and perhaps later on Aparajith and Huyen could give some experience about this, when it comes to looking for work, it's not always a prerequisite to speak German. I know for certain industries it is much harder. For example, consulting, it's almost a definite that you'll need German, but for many of our graduates, they find work after graduation with really no sort of professional German level at all. Okay, so onto the application journey. So we operate on a sort of open applications policy here, so people are welcome to submit their application whenever they like. The way that the journey works is once you have submitted, then you will be invited in for a personal interview. It can either happen over Skype or in face-to-face, that's also fine. Once that's been conducted, your application will be reviewed by the admissions committee and we will get a decision back to you. This whole process should take no more than 2 or 3 weeks, 4 at the maximum. And we do encourage people to be very open with it. It's definitely something that we like to see is people getting in touch with us, asking questions, you know, do these references work? Should I find somebody different? Is this an appropriate structure for a scholarship essay? All of these kind of things are the sort of questions that we like to hear. Because it is quite a small class, we do try to look at a person's application in a very holistic manner. That means that we try to look past test scores when appropriate. You can imagine with only 50 people in the class, that it would only take 1 or 2 who have the wrong attitude to spoil that experience for everybody else. And what we're really looking for is people who are collaborative rather than competitive. People who are going to work to ensure that everybody in the class succeeds, rather than just sort of putting themselves ahead of everybody else. Also regarding applications, we do offer scholarships. More information can be found on our website about scholarships because that's a whole webinar in its own. Upon acceptance, all students are sort of handed over to our student services team, and they help with securing things like visas and relocation. There's often a lot of help when it comes to housing. We don't offer our own accommodation at ESMT, but we do have partnerships with a number of kind of housing suppliers that work through very informal networks, should we say, and there's definitely a few apartments that have just been round and around a few generations of ESMT students. So there we are, that's the application journey. The next big deadline for you all to be aware of, if you are interested in applying, is June the 2nd. Now this is our early bird deadline, where if you can apply before this time, we will give you, I think it's around a 10% discount in your tuition fees. For anyone who's sort of on the cusp of whether they'll be able to get their application in on time, we can be relatively flexible. The most important thing is that you reach out to us. So for example, if you have 99% of your application ready to go before June, but your GMAT is a few weeks later, then that's the kind of thing that we can work with. So please make sure to get in touch with us if you have any questions about that. So that's enough from me. Now the reason that we're all here today, which is to hear from our 2 MBA students, Aparajith and Huyen. So to begin with, do you want to maybe sort of introduce yourselves, where you're from, and sort of briefly explain to why it was you were looking to do an MBA?
Yes. So my name is Nguyen. I'm from Vietnam. Well, actually, there are a lot of factors why I choose to obtain an MBA. It's not one nominating factors because first of all, I want to have some sort of like push in career, and I guess that's gonna be like the most common factor when it comes to MBA. And I want some sort of like international experience. And when I look around, also not to mention, because that's also my third factor would be immigration purpose. I want to change the working location. And when it comes to immigration, then European countries would be one of the top choices. And Germany would then shine. For Berlin, I would say that people can actually live and survive without German. Yeah, and actually, like my classmates, there are a lot of them like me don't speak German, and we managed our life pretty well, like from the very beginning to now. Yeah, and yeah, that's pretty much like 90% of why I choose to obtain an MBA, and especially in Berlin. And like in Berlin, like ESMT would be the best school. So
and what about yourself, Aparajith? Am I right in saying that you've already been taking German lessons and you've dedicated quite a lot of time to this?
Yeah. So I actually came here as part of the pre-MBA program. I'd gotten my admit from the admissions team about a week, about this week last year.
Okay.
And,
Oh, no.
around this week. And then I took up the pre-MBA program, and I came here on the 1st of July. And I picked up the language pretty well, because that was the only thing that I did when I got here. And I got to a B2 level by December. So when the program started, I had my B2 certificate in place. So the good incentive to come and make use of the pre-MBA program is that you can also get to know the city. You can get to know Europe better if you haven't traveled. I managed to squeeze in a visit to Finland and Poland when I was here. He was also able to learn the language and appreciate the German culture far better. So.
Okay, that's brilliant. And then, what were you sort of looking for when it came to doing an MBA? Was there a specific reason in mind that you had for pursuing this kind of program?
So for me, I wanted a one-year program. I wanted something that was short. I didn't want to be away from the work environment for too long. And this was probably a key factor for me. It was the culture of the classroom. And I can actually vouch for what Laurence said earlier, in that the classmates, and I would also extend this generalization to the faculty here, everyone in this building is extremely nice. When I came here as part of the pre-MBA program, no, I'm serious. So when I came here as part of the pre-MBA program, this wonderful lady called Karen, she runs the info center. She went out of her way to make sure that I was kind of prepped for the year that was coming. And when January came, I was not only prepared in terms of German, I was also prepared in terms of how to tackle the winter, how to tackle the bureaucracy, which is quite infamous here. And all of this only because I was able to make friends very easily, because people were very helpful, the staff.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. So now that the two of you have been here for a little bit of time, and you've experienced a few different, for example, modules. Perhaps Huyen, could you talk us through what is it like to be in a classroom at ESMT? Is there a specific style of teaching, or is it mostly lectures, or do you do a lot of group work, or what kind of thing is it?
So I would say it's combination of everything. We have class like from 9 to 12, and like have lunch from 12 to 2, and then again have class at 2 to 5. It's not tiring at all, because we all like talk during the lecture. It's not like listening all the time. And the lecture is actually a chance for me and like for our classmates to learn from each other. And actually, like during lunchtime, we actually have like a football, like a kicker table, where like everyone just go towards and like have some sort of fun. And then we have like a restaurant in the first floor, ground floor actually, and like everyone just have lunch and talk to each other. And because that's actually a benefit of having like a small class size, when everyone knows each other really well, and then we have group assignment to better know each other.
We're actually in the same group.
Yes.
Oh, really?
And that's how our friendship started. And he actually told me to get German classes, because that's a way that I can appreciate the culture, because like we definitely can live without German, but live comfortably with German is better anyways. And would be nice to do a little bit of travel to different places in Germany where people don't speak that much English.
But to answer your question, Laurence, you do have different professors using different methodology. So something that I generally dread is the cold calling that happens in a couple of professors' classes. I'm not going to name them here. They might be watching this, and I want my class participation points. The thing is, you have to prepare in order to be a responsible student, at least the way I look at it. You have all these cases, and if you want to make sense of what's happening in the class, you need to come prepared. because one, you don't know if the professor is going to ask you, hey, Aparajith, okay, so what do you think of the case that you were supposed to read? And if you fumble, everyone knows that you haven't read the case, and that's not what you want. You don't want those judgmental eyes. It's not that bad. But like she said, every person in the class has a very unique background, yeah, and a very unique perspective. So what I learned was you can take a very simple case and you can look at it from different angles. And everyone tries to bring in their own experience, and you know, we literally dissect, or rather we figuratively dissect these cases. So I think we've had like a wonderful experience so far, and it's unbelievable. It's just been a couple of months.
Yeah, well, fantastic. So you mentioned, I mean, the two of you in the same study group. That's someone, I mean, you're from two very different nationalities. How do you find the work with different cultures? Have there been any kind of difficult points so far, or is it all relatively? It's an enthusiastic nod.
When it comes to like 24 nationalities, we have like maybe 100 points of view.
Oh, yeah.
And when it comes to like a group of like 6 people, we have like 3-4 nationalities in our group. And well, good sign is we have different points of view and we have different perspectives when it comes to problem solving. But when it comes to agreements and stuff, then it's probably a challenge because like everyone is trying to protect their point, and like you have to be well prepared for like your ideas and opinions on things. And but again, we're not being like stubborn. Like these other people ideas and opinions, we accept it when it's reasonable.
So I think if you look at the way a group's life goes, when we come together, we are asked very seriously to design a logo for each group and come up with a set of values that we together believe is very crucial for the group's survival. And initially, when we did this exercise, I was a little skeptical. I was like, okay, why are we doing this? It comes across as too touchy-feely. You know, we're here to like be analytical. And it's only during the course that you understand the values of those values. Because when the fact of the matter is the first module is going to be very hectic, which means everyone is really stressed. And one person's comment without having the intent to hurt someone can inadvertently hurt someone. And then what you need is you need a robust set of values to ensure that the group dynamics don't go haywire. There have been a couple of instances, not too bad, but of a couple of misunderstandings. But what I've noticed again unanimously is, yes, people are stressed and everyone is aware, but everyone is respectful of each other's time and emotions. So even if someone cut someone off and person A felt bad, person B will go and hey, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. So you have the sense of companionship that is there throughout the class.
Also, people actually prepare for us when it comes to like teaming.
Oh yeah.
With the building high performance team, and that's probably the best experience so far. I'm not going to spoil the part.
We are going to spoil it for you, but it's the best part. It's been there since I think the first batch of ESMT, if my memory serves me right. But it's an experience like none other.
Oh, fantastic! Well, you're right. We probably shouldn't talk too much about this because I think the part of the joy of it is in this prize. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it so much. Now, I know that you've obviously only been with us for a few months. It's still relatively early days in your MBA journey. But I was wondering if you could talk us through any kind of interaction you've had with the careers team so far. And for example, I don't know if either of you had a very clear idea about what you wanted to do after you graduated, or if you were a little bit more open to different possibilities. But if so, could you maybe tell us about how the working with the careers team so far has gone?
Actually, it was great so far because like actually the school and especially the career service team provide me with like the CV writing workshop. Like we actually had like one-on-one meetings before that career coach. We not to mention we have career coach And like the career service have like an open like door revelation when you just come in and ask questions when like you have any doubts. And also they prepare, like job fairs, company visits, and yeah, that's pretty helpful.
So when I got here last year, July, August, I sent an email to Marcel, the head of career services, and I told him, hey, I'm in town. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you if you're free. And I get a response almost like that saying, okay, I'm free on this. Would you like to come? And that was actually quite surprising because this is a one-year program, and I would expect that Marcel would say, hey, how about next year? But no, he was actually open to it, and he gave me 45 minutes of his time, undivided attention. And we met a couple of times during my pre-MBA program, and he was able to critique my ideas on, okay, how do I have to think about this whole career planning? And this was just before, because after when I became a full-fledged MBA student, that's when the entire product portfolio of the career services team, if I may use that term, came into effect. We have career cafes, which means both Marcel and Sophie generally sit down in our cafe, waiting to talk to anyone who has questions. You don't have to really schedule an appointment with them. We both have, everyone gets a career coach, and you get to choose your career coach. So you have these 6 people who come and say, this is my specialty, this is what I've done. And when you feel, okay, I can connect with this person, you say, I would like to be paired with this coach. So you have a career coach. We have other softwares to ensure that our CVs have a high success rate of going through machine reading softwares, if I may. Yeah. So we have all these tools. So if I can put it in a shorter paragraph, if you know what you want, I'm certain that the school has the resource to help you get what you need.
That's fantastic. That's brilliant. And for you, sort of personally, both, did either of you have a strong idea about what you wanted to do when you came into this, or were you sort of open to new things?
Actually, I'm open to opportunities. But then again, I have to. Well, I will not be able to choose like hundreds of them. So I have to, at the end of the day, I have to narrow down, and actually the career coach and career service will help me with that, like along the MBA journey, because at the end of the day, again, it's my choice. And so like during the program, I have to figure out myself that what I like, what I'm gonna be, which industry I want to work in the future.
That's cool. And yourself, Aparajith?
I thought I was sure. I came here and then I saw, okay, the options, and now, well, I'm kind of spoiled for choice. So I'm actively not choosing till about September.
Okay.
Then,
well, brilliant. I mean, it's nice to know that, because I know for a lot of people, when they're thinking about doing an MBA, it's with a relatively fixed idea in mind about what they'd like to do afterwards. And it's always really nice to hear when students sort of have their eyes opened a little bit when they do arrive to realize that there's a little bit more out there. It's a good sort of unknown unknowns kind of thing. Brilliant. Well, I mean, you've got another 9 months left or so, but I'm sure you'll both do very, very well when it comes to post-graduation employment. So just sort of as a kind of final question to you, I think before we open it up to a Q&A from the audience, because I think we've taken about half an hour. Just to circle back to the very first steps. So when you kind of set out on your kind of MBA journey, what were the first sort of resources that you looked at? Was it sort of rankings or fairs or things like that? And then along, a little bit further on from that, how did you find the application process? And is there any kind of tips that you would give to anybody who's out there listening right now who might be thinking of applying to business school this year?
So when I started the application process, I'll take the second question first. The application process had so 2 parts to it. One, I reached out to the admissions team. I sent them my profile and I said, hey, I'd like to apply. And I understand that this is probably bang in the middle of your application cycle. But if you can let me know when you start your next cycle, I'd like to apply then. and it'll also be great if you could evaluate my profile. And I got a response within a couple of days saying, you know what, okay, there's a good fit. We strongly encourage you to apply. And the application portal for the next year starts November, December. And the speed at which that response came was actually quite surprising. And second, when I did apply, there was one bug in the application system, and I reached out to the admissions team. They're very nice to say, you know what, hey, yeah, we're aware of this small bug. There was just like some date formatting issue, and I was worried that the dates might get flipped and it might not make sense with my CV. And they said, no, we're aware of the small bug, and rest assured, we will do what it takes in the back end. So for me, the fact that the admissions team was extremely warm and friendly, even on email, was quite surprising. And at the last end, towards the admission process, when I had my interview, right after the interview, the person who interviewed me, Stephanie Klu, the head of admissions, was nice enough to put me, at least send me a list of people that I can get in touch with if I want to get more insights on the program and get their unique perspectives. And one person, Mr. Ajay, was extremely helpful in giving me his ideas on the program. So if I look at it end to end, right from the admissions team to the people who graduated from the program and who are helping the admissions team, that gave me the confidence that, okay, the system is feeding back into itself.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's definitely something that we recommend for anybody who's interested in perhaps studying with us at ESMT. It's a very simple trick. If you just throw ESMT into the search bar on LinkedIn, it will start pinging up lots of different people who studied with us. And almost all of our graduates are more than happy to speak to prospective candidates. Connect with them and just say, you know, I'm interested in learning a little bit more about your time at ESMT, and I'm sure you'll get a very positive response. And what about yourself, Huyen? How did you kind of kick off your MBA search?
I would say I have somewhat similar experience with Aparajith because, well, Stephanie did actually like link me with the alumni at the ESMT MBA program, and I had a lot of information and insights from them. Also, because like my experience was like somewhat similar and different. Because I actually work full time and then applying, like taking GMAT and stuff. So it was actually stressful at the time. So that if there's one thing I advise you guys when it comes to applying, then plan ahead, because you don't want to stress out too much, and your productivity will be like lower. So like plan ahead, because I planned my MBA like 2 years ago. And
Well, that's good. Great to know. It's true. It's a very long process. It's not something that happens quickly. Okay, so thank you both very, very much. That's the end of the questions from me. And now, Mila, we are ready to open it up to questions from the floor.
Thank you for your presentation and discussion. We are moving on with the questions that were already asked. Anyone who has other questions, you can type them in the chat box. So starting with the first one, did you apply to other schools as well, or was it just ESMT?
Well, for me, it's just ESMT. Because well, I like intentionally choose Germany and Berlin. So as I said, like ESMT is like the best school here, and actually I do care about ranking. So yeah. So
I tried my luck a few years back with a couple of schools in the US, and I wasn't able to get into them. So if I look at my MBA cycle, there was cycle number 1, cycle number 2. Cycle number 1 had a couple of schools. In cycle number 2, there was only one school, and I was sure that it was ESMT, and I was very lucky that okay, it worked out this way. Yeah, I would agree, because I was very certain on one thing, that the culture of the classroom, I didn't want to get into a college that was extremely competitive, and coming here, I'm very, very happy that it worked out this way. That's what.
If I can just add something from the kind of admissions side, it's definitely something that we see quite a lot. It's really, really good when students have a very firm idea in their mind about the type of institution that they're looking for. It sounds like it was very similar for you two, that you had done your research first and then decided before you made your application. And for anyone out there who is a little bit conflicted about where they want to end up, I would definitely recommend putting a bit of a limit on the amount of schools that you apply for. It's the kind of thing that if you're applying for 10 or 15 or 20 schools, then to us that sort of comes across as someone who hasn't necessarily done their research and hasn't necessarily thought too much about why they're sort of hoping to do an MBA with us. It's something that we look for in candidates is not just people that we've decided are good quality, but people who are interested in us. And so if someone comes along and says, you know, I have these skills and I believe that your institution can give me these skills and this exposure which will get me to here, that's really nice joined up thinking, which shows to us that this person has really thought properly about their experience. So don't, I mean, by all means, don't feel like you're not allowed to apply for too many schools, but definitely try to narrow it down as much as you can before the actual application.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to continue with the next question. Can you tell us more about the pre-MBA program? How long is it? Does it have an additional fee?
So when I did the pre-MBA program last year, it was I took the 6 months option. There are multiple options. You can come here either in in July, August, or September and work towards your German till December. I chose July because I wanted to make sure that I learned as much of German as I could, and yeah, it does come at a price. It was around, I think, 3,000 euros. But if you ask me, I'd say it's definitely worth it. ESMT has paired up with the German language school GLS here in Berlin, and the school is phenomenal. I think it would have been very easy to have just paired up with some school, but I think here ESMT really did their homework. They chose a school that prides itself in good quality. This might be some sort of cross promotion here, but pardon me for that, Laurence. But GLS provided me the exact requirement that a person would need to learn a language like German. So I would definitely say the pre-MBA program, that if you have the option to start this in July, please take it up in July.
Also, not to mention, ESMT does have post-MBA program.
Oh, yeah.
If you are interested, just look for it, because there are a lot of also German classes included in the post-MBA program as well. So you will be more well prepared for jobs.
Okay, thank you, guys. Moving to the next question. Was quitting your job a tough decision to start MBA instead?
That's a really tough question, man. I like to say yes. It was a little difficult, but you'll have to look at this as a year of investment. It's just been 2 months, and I can already see the way in which my thinking has dramatically changed. And the kind of exposure that I had back in India was very different. It wasn't as diverse as it is here. So yeah, in some sense, yes, there is an actual cost. You're not getting paid. Yeah, there is an opportunity cost as well, right? But if I were to do it, would I do it again? Yes, I would, without a second doubt. Yeah.
And on top of that, because ESMT MBA program is only 12-14 months, so you actually don't lose that much. And again, because the value is I personally think it's higher than the cost you pay for it. So yeah, why not?
Thank you. Being on the topic of your previous job, what was your job before joining ESMT?
So I I was working for a startup in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, about like innovation in healthcare. And well, as a startup, I actually did a lot of stuff and not like constrain myself into one department, because that startup usually do. And I first started with business development position, and then moving forward to operation lead when like I know every part of the company. And it was actually quite rewarding with like network and relationship with my ex boss and like my ex co-workers. We still have even like a good relationship, and my boss actually write me the recommendation letters when I applied for ESMT Berlin.
Yeah. I also come from a startup background. I was working in a financial inclusion startup back in Mumbai.
Yeah, we will, and actually the batch of ESMT Berlin 2020 has a lot of people working in startup, but also in corporations before. So it's like actually a mix. So you can learn a lot.
Thank you. Next question. How did you fund your MBA? Was it through scholarship or a loan?
Well, actually, I have partial scholarship, and I have my own savings when I was working, because I used to work for like 6 years. So I have my savings, and I will actually borrow a small amount from my parents. So that's how I fund my MBA program.
So for me, it was I took a loan.
Thank you. Can you share more about whether there are some networking events that ESMT holds for their students where they can meet?
Okay.
Yes, actually, I attended the job fair organized by ESMT Career Service, and there are actually more than 30 companies, and we actually had the time to meet and like to get to know the working cultures, ask questions, and like connect with actual recruiters from that company. We met like McKinsey, we met Zalando, we met May & Co,
Accenture
Interactive as well. So that's a well-established company.
So if I can answer this question with on an imaginary timeline, right? So there is this pre-MBA program, and then you have the MBA program as well. If you take the pre-MBA program, there are two networking opportunities that you have. One, you have events that are happening in the school on most of the days. Some club is organizing some event at. You'll have the Berlin Alumni chapter coming and organizing. You'll have master classes that the ESMT school itself is organizing. And on top of this, you have events that are on Eventbrite and Meetup. So you have opportunities aplenty if you come as early as July, and you can actually take advantage of this. Now, once the program starts, realistically speaking, the amount of time you would want to go and invest in networking sessions might drop depending on where you, depending on how you choose your resource allocation. But the meetups and the Eventbrite events still hold good. The school continues to organize its events, and you have these clubs. On top of that, the career service comes in play. You have people from the industry coming and giving you talks. For example, I think last week or the week before, you had someone, the BCG. So you had a person who's heading the BCG office in Berlin come and give a talk. I think he was a managing partner. Yeah, he was a managing partner. And you also have field trips that the school organizes through the career services. So you have the career, you have company visits. So you have all these opportunities for you to go network. It's honestly a matter of time.
Thank you. The next question, did ESMT help with visas for candidates coming from outside the EU?
Visas, did I get your question right? Are you asking us about the visas?
Yes.
So based on my experience and my understanding of how this works, there are two aspects to this. One, you have ESMT as a school, and then you have the German bureaucracy. Now, the ESMT school does a fantastic job in helping you through the visa process. They give you all the documents, and they take their time, patiently answer all your questions about the visa application process. To the extent where I could even say, if required, they are in a position to kind of handhold you through the process. Now, where the uncertainty could come from is this aspect of the German bureaucracy. You don't know which person is reviewing your file, which process is being used to grant or deny your visa. My understanding of the process is when you submit your documents to the consulate in your home country, the files are then dispatched to an office here in Berlin. You have someone in Berlin reviewing your file and then saying, okay, yes or no, or asking you for more documents. And in this aspect, the school does whatever it takes to help you. I know one case personally where there was some delay in, actually, no, there were two cases. One, myself. So there was one person from Lebanon who kind of joined us right at the deadline. So the program had started, the first week orientation was almost over, and the actual deadline was coming into effect. And the school was actually in touch with the consulate in Lebanon. So the school does whatever it can to help you in the process. But yeah, it also depends on the consulate at the end of the day.
And that's when actually I do realize that our class was extremely supportive when it comes to like like because he actually had difficulty with the visa, and like the class was like really supportive and like yeah.
We had like 4 of our classmates actually went and to the dean of the degree programs and tried to give him extra days to come. It worked, and he came, and yeah, he's with us now. Yeah.
Thank you. We have time for a couple more questions. So moving on, do students have any preferences when applying for a job in the companies that founded the business school?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Yes.
Well, I think I can probably take that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So our founder companies, they're obviously very, very important to us as a school. And we do get a good chunk of students every year who arrive, who are hoping to gain very close connections with them. And if I talk about them too much, I will get told off by the careers team, because they're always at pains to emphasize to people that just because you study with us does not mean you're going to become the CEO of McKinsey when you graduate. The benefit of the schools really for us is through almost instant feedback from them when they see skills shortages in the market. So they came to us a couple of years ago and said that we're really lacking people with entrepreneurial skills and people with analytics skills, and we were able to integrate. It does mean that these companies are probably more widely represented in our on-campus events and company visits. People like Bosch and Lufthansa, which are very German companies anyway, and so they have a very strong presence in Berlin. I know that there was a consulting project with Lufthansa last year, so there is a lot of opportunity to sort of connect with these companies. Some of them support us in a number of different ways, so whether that's corporate financing or scholarships, and some of them do turn up at the end of the year and just pick up 4 or 5 graduates and walk away with them. But it's definitely something I would really like to emphasize, is that be sort of realistic when it comes to where you're hoping to end up. Just because McKinsey was a founding company does not mean that you're any more likely to get a job with them here than you would be at another prestigious top 10 business school as well.
Thank you. Again, I guess this would go to Laurence as well. How many of your alumni have managed to start their own businesses after graduation?
Sure, yeah. So it's a big part of what we do is entrepreneurship. Obviously, with the entrepreneurship specialization and with that being part of our sort of pillars. And obviously, being based in Berlin, we sit on top of one of the largest startup economies in Europe. Really, it's matched only by London, I would say, in terms of its size and its diversity. So it's a big draw for a lot of students who come to us, is that they are hoping to be immersed in that very entrepreneurial world. When it comes to people starting their own businesses straight after graduation, we usually get quite a high percentage. It's usually around 10% of the class will start their own venture of some sort when they graduate, which I'm always very impressed by. I've always thought that the end of your MBA is presumably the point in your life where you have the least amount of disposable income. So finding the money to start your own company, I think, is quite impressive. But people do it, and it's a real achievement for them. There is some support that we offer to those who are interested in starting their own thing. Obviously, we have our own student-led initiatives, things like the Entrepreneurship Club. But as a school as well, we have a lot of close ties to the entrepreneurial community in Berlin. We have a partnership with Space Shack, which is a kind of co-working and incubator space on the other side of town, which students are able to use. So they're not just interacting with people in the school, but also in a wider economy as well. So there are a number of different ways that we support students. So yeah, I would say it's a good 10% of the class will go on to start their own thing immediately after graduation. When you get into sort of 5 or 10 years after that, obviously the numbers are a little bit harder to put together.
Thank you. We have time for one last question, and it's about accommodation. And it goes like, was accommodation easy to obtain in Berlin?
Okay. For me, I think I kind of wrote Mr. Luck with this one, in that the school was extremely helpful in helping me get the accommodation. When you sign up, what the school does is they give you like an online welcome kit with information that is crucial for your visa, for your accommodation, and for other general purpose things. And I was able to contact 2 or 3 providers. I think I was told by one of the providers that some apartments were reserved for ESMT students, and so I actually signed my lease with service provider Nguyen about, I think, April or May. I think April. So I got my offer in March. The next month I had an apartment set. While having said that, I'm thinking this is more of the exception than the norm. The norm is you are going to have some difficulties finding your dream apartment, but finding some apartment accommodation is not going to be an issue. I think you've moved a couple of houses. No, just one. Okay.
So actually, I got my room before moving to Berlin, but the problem is like the room only will after the program starts. But because in Berlin, the Vietnamese community is like huge, and I actually had the chance to connect with one Vietnamese student, and she's really kind to like let me rent her room for like a month. But again, it's not that hard anymore. I would say it's like 50-60% of hardness right now. But because like you have a lot of websites that you can look for your room, and you can actually know the room, the size of the room, like how many rooms are there in the apartment, and like what's included in the rent. Just to name a few places, Spot a Home. Yeah, a lot of websites that you can look for. And actually, I got mine when I was in Vietnam. So yeah.
And there are some apartments that keep changing hands from one ESMT student to the other. So one of my classmates, he's staying in the house that was previously resided by a friend of mine who was from the previous year's batch. So you could be staying in that apartment next year. Who knows?
That's really nice to know. I had a very similar experience when I moved to Berlin as well. It was only about a year ago. So it sounds pretty similar to you guys, really. It's definitely, Berlin has a reputation for being quite cheap accommodation wise, and the reality of that it is quite cheap accommodation wise, especially if you compare it to other European capitals, you know, Barcelona or Paris or London. It's definitely over the last few years has got a little bit more competitive just as the city has grown, and so those kind of 90 square meter apartments for 200 euros a month don't really exist anymore, but it's pretty straightforward when it comes to finding something for yourself. Yeah.
I think our classmate actually settled like after a month, if like they didn't have a chance to reserve a room before moving to Poland. But like,
so you have a lot of workarounds. You can take an Airbnb for a month, and then you can come get a feel of the city. Because it's one thing to be sitting on the other side of the world in front of a computer trying to make sense of, okay, how does the city function? It's a completely different thing to come here, get a feel of how Berlin is, and figure out, okay, which Keats, which Keats is your Keats, you know. So if you're someone who likes to party, maybe Neukölln, or and if you like quieter areas, so there are areas for every requirement. Rest assured, I'm sure you'll find an accommodation. It's something that you should be thinking about, but not overtly concerned about.
Yeah, and from a school's perspective, we because it's a relatively small cohort, we know the situation of most of our students. So it's very, very rare that you would be left sort of stranded for the whole year. If it does get desperate, then we can marshal our forces for good as well.
Okay, thank you, Huyen, Aparajith, and Laurence for the informative presentation and for taking the time to answer the questions. To those whose questions were not answered, we will send you the answer via email soon. You will also receive a link to the recording of the whole webinar so you can rewatch it. On behalf of the Unimi team, we wish you luck on your academic journey and we hope to meet you again soon. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for this webinar. Have a nice weekend, all of you. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.